For anyone who's interested, G-Web's car has 212,000 miles on it.
That's a way to start it. And we are live. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Stone Guy 223. Do some quick introductions from my left. Returning after long hiatus, we've got Eric.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, good. And I think Island stepped out. Island Z from Hawaii. Next time we got Gun Websites.
Howdy. Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. We've got Midwest Tactical.
Hey, thanks for inviting me back.
Absolutely. And Moon Food.
What's up? Thanks for having me.
Yep. And then we got Mr. Street Fighter.
What's up?
What's happening, people? All right, so I'll give it a second to post. There's a little lag out there. I've got a few open spots. Got some invites out. Google Plus again has been changing things around. I don't know if you guys got the memo, but today I was told I had to join a new format or lose my connection or whatever. I don't know. They keep fixing what's not broke, but inevitably they're gonna do something to make it better. So it's a little weird trying to send links and trying to get connected.
Am I in Inception right now?
Now you just have the chat on somewhere else, and we're getting some some feedback from you.
Got it.
The other thing is I can't find the Q&A, so what I'm going to do, I will keep an eye on the gun channels part. I couldn't turn on the Q&A when I started, and then I'll be watching the YouTube side as well. So, you know, like I said, we'll try to keep on top of that and field any questions from that part. We will be doing our giveaway tonight as well. No special entry required in that. It's just going to be a random giveaway from gun websites and gun channels. So make sure you check out gun channels. All right, so now all the formalities are out of the way, we'll get to the initial topic this evening. Last night, Never Enough Ammo, we kind of got into a little bit of a budget arsenal, if you will. And we talked about a lot of firearms that we would feel, I guess, good about or feel confident in carrying that was a budget option. And tonight I'm going to go to the opposite extreme, and I want to talk about the best of the best, the 1% of the high-end firearms on the market, and just kind of get your thoughts on, you know, what's out there, what's, you know, at what point do you reach you know, like a diminishing return? Like, at what point are you simply paying for the name versus paying for the, you know, the quality or craftsmanship that goes into these pieces? So, I don't know. We'll start it off. Maybe triggers. Triggers are always kind of a, you know, like, there's triggers on the market right now as much as $600 for just the trigger group.
In what kind of weapon?
AR and Remington 7. I think there's a $400 trigger for a Remington 700 or a bolt gun of that similar platform, you know. So, you know, to me, $400, $300, $400, $500, $600 for a trigger, you know.
Seems
at what point? Yeah, I mean, at what point can you justify that?
Seems like you could take that $400 and just give your rifle to a qualified gunsmith and have them do a lot more than that trigger could do.
Well, that's just it. Like, as far as trigger goes, it's, you know, you could take and we'll just talk hypothetical, but if you take a 6-pound trigger, stock trigger from a, let's say an AR, typically 6 pounds, yeah, you can mess around with the springs, you can mess around with the sear, you can maybe take a pound off, but then you start compromising reliability, so then there's a point where you say, all right, well, I want to get something from the a replacement trigger, a drop-in trigger, like a CMG, GCM, I can never remember that one. What's the trigger? Hold on, us.
CMMG.
Suppose it depends on what you're using the rifle for.
CMC triggers, which are fantastic triggers in the $200 range. I think $200, and you can get Geisley's or what's another good one out there at the Timney, thank you. Those are all in that $250 range. I could definitely see justifying spending.
Elf triggers.
What is it?
Elf.
You saying elf?
Yep.
Elf? I've never heard of elf.
I saw a trigger today on Facebook. I can't remember the name of it, but it was made by a guy that worked for Timney for like 15 years or something, and it looked pretty sick. And the retail is only supposed to be $150. It's a drop-in. It had like it was like a 3.5 pound break, no creep, no like really short reset. It looked really nice. If I can find it again, I'll mention it later.
For AR or for bolt gun?
So AR.
If you look up elf, they're self-contained, kind of like Timony. They're all captured in one piece.
I don't know. After a certain point, I think you're sacrificing reliability also to get a better trigger, and I'd rather have reliability than.
Well, see, that's what I meant by I think if you start dicking around with your own trigger, replacing springs and trying to file down stuff, I think you run into that. Now, when you talk about a factory drop-in or a complete drop-in replacement trigger, I think that's where you can. You don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. You get a complete drop-in trigger system from Geisley that can bring it down to 2 pounds, and you don't have to worry about reliability, because that's all been worked out from, their engineers.
Yeah, I agree.
But then, at what, for me, 200's about where I draw the line on what I'm willing to pay for a trigger. You know what I'm saying? But that's just my personal thing. So
there's like the $65. What's the Geisley sister company?
ALG.
ALG, yeah, $65, and you get a trigger that's like dead nuts reliable. I mean, it's a mil spec trigger, but it's smooth. I mean, it's not like sniper shit, but it's smooth, all that creep is gone, all the staginess is gone, and it's something you never have to worry about. I mean, it's high quality, but also on a budget, if you are on a budget.
Now, is ALG just doing the AK triggers, or do they do the AR triggers?
They started with AR, and now they're doing AK.
Okay, I didn't realize they did the AR ones.
Yeah, they're basically like the less expensive version of Geisley, and honestly, like, they're nice little triggers if you and you're getting something that'll probably never. I mean, I'd be amazed if something malfunctioned because it's a stock trigger. It's just been polished and coated, or coated and polished, I should say.
All right, cool. Well, yeah, that's like I said. What I want this chat to end up being is, something for people to reference or watch and get an idea of what's available out there on the market on the more high-end side of things.
Well, I mean, also you gotta lot of people do drop-in stuff these days, but you know, you have a nice bolt gun. You know, it's something you think you want to upgrade and make into a better firearm. Like spending $400 on a drop-in trigger might be great and all, but you could all if you find a qualified, and I'm stressing qualified, like somebody who comes with a good reputation that you can trust, gunsmith. That $400 is like, you know, that could be like 8 hours that he could spend honing that rifle, like bedding the stock and just dialing it all in for you, taking out all the slop that you can't have taken out by a drop in
Doing a lot more than just a trigger.
And you probably, yeah, you'll probably get a lot more value out of it, you know. And I feel like sometimes it's something people overlook because let's face it, there aren't as many gunsmiths as there used to be.
Now, would you guys say, would you prefer a drop-in trigger kit versus a parts kit? Meaning, you know, would you rather have a complete drop-in, or would you rather change a spring or an extract?
Are we talking competition or like serious work? You know what I mean? If we're talking competition, I think that's a different usage than actual.
I'm talking for whatever you want, whether it's your hunting rifle, whether it's your self-defense rifle or firearm.
Well, if I'm going to be changing triggers myself, I'm going to do a drop-in just because I'm not that experienced with parts. So. See, and
I kind of prefer a drop-in. Like, for instance, the
You mean like a Timney where it's one unit?
Right.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
You know, the like Ruger sent me the BX25 drop-in trigger for the Ruger 1022. That thing is phenomenal. You know, I've got 3 Ruger 1022s now. I just finished building one up for a trainer, if you will. And so, you know, I talked to the people at Ruger and kind of told them the plan, and because I ordered another rifle from them, and they're like, well, try this trigger out. And it's amazing, and hopefully you guys have heard about this. But if you haven't, it's the BX25. It's a 2.5 pound trigger. If you've ever taken a 1022 apart, you know how easy that is to do. It's a 3 pins trigger system, drops out. You just put this new one in, and it takes your, you know, I've got my trigger gauge, and my factory trigger, Ruger trigger, was 6.5 to 7, and this BX25 is 2.5 pounds every time, consistent. So something like that, and an MSRP on those things are like $99. You can, you know, find them for $79 or $69 at different, you know, gun shops. But you know, something like that can drastically improve your, you know, your firearm and just make it more fun to shoot. I think that's money well spent. You know, I think you could easily justify that.
I guess to me it depends on what you're using the firearm for. If you're using it for a self-defense reason, then I don't want a drop-in. I'd rather have a actual, as close to
Mil spec?
I don't want to say mil spec, but as close to factory as possible. Like,
okay.
To me, a Geisley SSA, to me, that's what I'm talking about. I'd rather have that than than like a Timney, you know, drop-in.
I found that trigger, it's velocity triggers. I put a YouTube video on the side on it.
Okay, cool.
But it's a drop-in trigger. Looks pretty sweet. Like they said, the guy that designed it worked for Timney for however many, over a decade or something. But the MSRP on it's $150, which sounds nice.
Yeah, I mean, that's not bad at all. Not bad at all. All right, so and then so you get obviously you've got let's say AR for example. You've got AR factory ARs right now that are probably at the best price we've seen them and are going to see them. You know, $5.99, $6.99 for decent quality. Um, on up to $2,000-$3,000. Yeah, so from I guess the question is, and this is obviously this is going to be, personal preference ultimately, but what's the most you guys would spend on a rifle, like on an AR, let's say, where you're talking high end? Like, what do you consider?
Well, like my question, I guess, is like a BCM, is that considered high end or is that just good quality?
Well, that's kind of where I was going with this. Is there a difference, or where do you draw the line between calling something high end, calling it overpriced or boutique, versus
Definitely
just a
seen
great
$2,300 ARs, but like a BCM, you can get that under $1,000 maybe. You can pay more for one as well. I mean, if you get the jackhammer or whatever, isn't that what the one is called, the jackhammer, and it's like over $2,000.
ARs are a hard platform for this question just because every part's interchangeable and there's a lot of models and a lot of different features on them.
I would separate the. I think there's a difference between expensive and quality.
But some expensive can be quality.
Yeah.
You would agree with that?
Oh yeah, I spent way too much on AR. I don't think I'll ever do that again, but I did. And
what end of the spectrum did you go to, PBR?
I bought a LWRC.
And to the tune of what, like 1,600 or something?
Oh, it was more than that.
Okay.
And I won't ever do that again because it ended up being kind of. I'd rather have a BMC, a Bravo company, or I mean, if I was going high end, maybe a Noveski, but I feel like I can get just as much gun out of a Daniel Defense or a BMC.
A lot of 1911s are going, or excuse me, a lot of ARs are going the road of 1911, where people automatically assume that more expensive is better. And I just haven't seen that more expensive is all that better all the time. I mean, it's expensive usually guarantees good, but it doesn't. But inexpensive doesn't, eliminate the chance that it's good. But a lot of times, what you're buying, you can get something that's just as good for less money. It's like I know lots of people that have spent $300 on a trigger in their AR, and at first they're like, best decision I ever made. And then I talk to them about 1,000 rounds later, and they're like, now I can't really tell much of a difference between it and the triggers that have worn in a little bit now.
Yeah, and I guess that was the ultimate kind of where I was going with this, is the fact that there are so many high-end companies out there. There's so many, what you would generally refer to as expensive firearms, but at what point are you simply paying for that name?
Well, it's not just the name. Sometimes you're not only just paying for the name, but you're paying for the fact that they only made 50 of them.
Right, like a Wilson Combat or something. Is that kind of what you're saying, or you said a Noveski, stuff like that, or are you talking even smaller production numbers?
Well, anytime you have smaller production, you're gonna. If someone is putting just as much labor into making having the machinery and taking the time to make a product, and they're only making 50 of them a week, instead of the 500 that a bigger company's cranking out, might be no better in quality, but because they're spending their manpower on, it's like when you pay for a custom leather holster. It is and believe me, I've had holsters anywhere from $50 to $500. And sometimes when you pay the extra, you're paying for bells and whistles, and you're paying for the time of the person who did everything by hand. And it's the same thing. It's to the point where, do you want to pay for your product, or do you want to pay for the time of the person that put the product together?
And Stone, you were kind of asking how far any one of us would go. Like, I know it's not an AR, but the SCAR 17, the H SCAR, the 308.
SCAR Heavy, yeah.
Yeah, I would love to be able to go that far and save up and get one of those. And
Oh, yeah.
everything that I've heard is, yes, it's not cheap. I mean, it would clearly be
No,
the
they're
most I would ever
26,
probably.
2800. Yeah.
It would probably be the most I would ever spend on any kind of rifle. But I don't necessarily know. Like personally, I don't know if it's really worth that much. But in my mind, I think it would be. You know what I'm saying? Kind of whether I'm
Oh, yeah.
convincing myself or that it's factual.
Well, that's just it. It's all going to be based on what someone. I mean, the market drives the price to a certain degree. You know, if someone's willing to pay for it.
Well, with the whole topic of the ARs and where's the quality versus name end, my buddy just built an AR buying parts off the internet. He's up to 2,500 bucks. And I looked at him right in his face and said, "You could go buy one off the shelf. They'll shoot just as good for 900 max."
I think it's
And
about.
he probably got all heated at you.
He got really heated at me, but at the same time, I basically said, "You're paying for names. You're paying for names. You're just buying this because it's the most expensive one at this store or this website."
I think it's a balancing act, especially something like an AR, which let's face an AR is a tool. You know, it's not. I mean,
Right.
there's some value to it, definitely. Like, I mean, maybe if when DB's Aunt Hillary becomes a president, will be a it'll they'll probably raise in value, but it's a tool, and you got to balance. Therefore, you should balance. You should find how much quality are you willing to pay for, and find that balance between quality and value.
Well, I basically told him for the price he paid, he could have built a cheap $500 one to put thousands of rounds through and practice with, and he could have bought a quality higher end one, $1,500 range, and still have saved money. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's well, friends, there's a Daniel Defense that I'm looking at that I really want. It's they've got this. I think it's called Tornado Gray color. Super, just a neat color. And it's about $1,800.
See,
You know,
you're still not. I mean, I would say that would be like the ceiling. Like $1,800 is my ceiling for an AR-15, like absolute most. But that doesn't mean like if you're buying a I don't know, like an old Norinco type, Norinco AK, you're definitely gonna be paying more because you're adding something else to it, and that would be like collecting value or
Rarity.
a rarity or the longevity of that firearm and what it'll be worth, late at a later date. Like you buy, some old piece of history or something, and then or a Colt Python, then that changes the math of the whole scenario.
Now there's a high-end firearm right there, the Python.
I wouldn't say it's high end. I would just say it's high quality.
I don't know, handcrafted and all that, and then the price point, you kind of got to go high end, don't you?
There's some, yeah, but then you look at like, what is it, Korth? Is that the German?
Oh,
Yeah. And
Oh.
to me, that's high end.
anything off Life Size Potatoes channel?
People get mad at me because I have that Python, and then every time someone asks me like, "What's my favorite revolver or my best revolver?" I never say Python, and people are like, "Don't you own a Python?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's just valuable because it's a good gun that's now rare. It's not the best revolver ever made by far."
Yeah, and how much was it when it came out? Was it comparable to other
Yeah, it was
competition?
It was a higher end revolver. I mean, it was as much as like a higher end Smith & Wesson, like a 6.29.
Yeah, it was.
So it was expensive, but it wasn't cheap. But it's I paid $600 for mine,
Right.
and now it's worth thousands.
I got to shoot a Python exactly once, and I thought it was the best revolver I'd fired. But then again, I've only owned some Smiths and a Ruger, so.
So
Yeah, we're not saying it isn't high value. We're just saying like some things you can easily justify paying a chunk of money. And other things like an AR-15, to me, I think you should start shopping around and really decide what you want. Like, you know, you got to do some do a little research before you buy a expensive AR. Whereas a
Uh,
Python, you're just going to pay that much.
Yeah, it's rare. With an AR, though, you can overspend a little bit on every part to the point where it means you're missing something big you could have had for the same price and had no lesser of a quality gun.
Well, and do you think with the AR, just the AR market, where it's has really exploded, and you do have so many like boutique shops, if you will, so many independent manufacturers that are taking advantage of the AR boost or boom, if you will. Um, is it because of that people are willing to spend more money versus like a brand name like Colt, for instance? That Colt's a Colt. That's synonymous with quality for the most part. So, and people recognize that people know what Colt is versus an AAR that may be built by some oddball company that only does a couple hundred a year.
well, I think today in the AR market, it's like there's there's a lot of confusion between what's a practical AR and what is like a high-speed gaming AR,
Well,
and they're kind of meshing together.
I think you're getting into a lot of boutique stuff too, and I think a lot of the time where the money comes in for ARs, and I'm totally fine with this, is where some people will say to you, "Hey, you can get the best the front end of an AR for, half the cost of what you're paying for this one," and then the person goes, "Yeah, but this one has skulls engraved into it." So you're getting a lot of boutique stuff, like customized forends, customized receivers, with special logos on them or special characters get etched into them, and people are paying big money for these little extra things that just, personalizations, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah, like the rails that have the roses in
Yeah,
them.
stuff like that.
I
Yeah,
like that.
there's one that's like that, and it's got Punisher skulls in it that I would love to
Yep.
have.
Yeah, they're pretty awesome.
Where do they have the roses at? What are you talking about?
On the rails, they're like cut out. They got different ones like ninja stars and roses. They're like
The tube rail is the
Yeah, it's a
tube actually
tube rail.
machined out.
Yep.
Yeah, there's some company that does those. That SHOT Show, they told me to stop by their booth, and they would make me one with my logo in it and everything. And I never got around. And it would say the Yankee Marshal down the side of it, cut into the rails and stuff. But I never saw them. Never got around to find them.
Cut into the rails, like looking down at the flat part of a rail.
It's into the like the forend, like when the rail system in the front. It's all the way around, like all the way around the circle. It's like instead of having just cutouts, like sometimes they'll have a diamond pattern, sometimes they'll have a dot pattern.
Handguard rail. I'm talking about a piece of actual rail. I thought you were you're talking about like the handguard.
Oh yeah, handguard.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
the forend, yeah.
But I think they leave spaces for rails to be attached. So.
Right.
But stuff
and
like that, you could be paying like $300 for it, and it's not worth much more than something you're paying maybe $100 for. But you want it, and it makes you happy, and it looks good. Then why not?
Yeah,
Well, I think
pay for it.
I think ARs are kind of, they have really more than any other firearm that I can think of brought more people or got more people involved in firearms in general. But, just the fact that some people call them Legos for adults or whatever. The fact they're so modular, the fact that you can play around and switch stuff and change stuff out, I think really excites people. Gives people the opportunity to kind of do their own, to put their own spin on an item versus walking out of the store with it. Kind of that generic feel of knowing that the gun they just bought is one that 100 other people have. You know what I'm saying? Versus being able to customize it and put your own flavor on.
Kind of ironic that a gun that was designed to be able to have 1,000 of them around and switch the parts between any one of them has kind of evolved into the most customizable and most make it your own kind of gun I've ever seen.
Like the most proprietary, you mean?
Not proprietary, but just they were kind of designed that there's going to be a pile of 1,000 of them over there, and they're all going to be the same. And nowadays, everyone has changed it to where two ARs. Sometimes I see ARs, and at first I'm like, "What the fuck is that?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's an AR that's been messed with so much that it looks funky."
Well, it's that they're easy to customize because each part comes right out, and you disassemble them in like a minute.
Yeah, and I think that's the fun part of it. That's like I said, that's the cool thing about ARs. And even AKs to some extent. AKs I think are becoming definitely more popular, and there's definitely more companies that are starting to.
Yeah, even Helm is making stuff for them now.
Right, exactly. There's a lot more companies that are realizing, hey, AKs are more popular. We need to start, offering some accessories for these things, and being on top of this. This market that's about to explode for even the AK. I'm reading something here now, and then the even like 1911s, I see a lot more. I mean, think about the 1911 industry in the last 3 years or 5. Let's say 5 years. I mean, how many more variations of 1911? How many, from carry to,
There will be 6 more variations, and then that will be the last one.
Say it again.
There will be about 6 more, and that'll be the last one.
But compared to what those started out to be and what you can get now is night and day. So.
Oh yeah, the GI 1911s only came in one version, so.
And it's kind of this, and I fell into the killing me, Eric. I fell into the whole kind of high-end. I don't want to say ski. I don't know how to phrase that, but the very first 1911 I ever bought was a Citadel from Rock Island. A fantastic gun, just $500. Solid. Had all the bells and whistles with flared magwell and flared or extended beaver tail and flared ejection port. I mean, just all a skeleton trigger and hammer and all the what you would consider upgrades to a traditional 1911. You get all that with the Citadel for $500. And then I started looking at the SIG, and I got the SIG. It's the Nightmare, the all black, which was like $1,200. Just primarily because aesthetically was a big factor. I mean, it's a beautiful gun, but a lot of it did have to do with the name, and the fact that it was $1,200 made me think that it must be. Oh shit! It must be a way better gun if this Citadel is this nice for $500. This $1,200 gun's got to be way better. So I bought it, and aesthetically, it's nicer. But I shoot side by side. I've shot both those guns, and that Citadel is just as comfortable, just as accurate, just as nice to shoot as that SIG. So that's kind of where you have to ask yourself, what are you paying for, and how do you justify it?
How much was that SIG you said?
1,200.
Okay, and how much was the
much you-
Citadel one more time?
500.
Oh,
There's
oh.
other, but see, like, you know, that's 1911s though, but they're kind of like ARs, where they're just kind of like everybody makes one, and all the good ones kind of do the same thing. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, crappy ones, yeah, you might have some issues there, but like a quality, value, valuable, like, reputable company, they're all kind of making the same thing. So, I mean, how many flavors of the same vanilla do you need? You know what I mean?
Well, but that's like the other thing that we're thinking of when SIG versus Rock Island or the Arms Corps is also labor costs for construction or building them.
So how come we're all probably willing to suggest that ice cream can be cheap, or it can be fancy, or it can be all that, but ARs are pretty much all the same? They just throw a price tag on them depending on their brand, like identity.
Well, let me tell you this, and this is, and you guys can go look this up. I don't know if you ever watch this show called Brain Games, but they post a lot on the on YouTube through its National Geographic channel, I believe. But it's called Brain Games, and they actually did this social experiment where they had people out in the park, and they set up a taste test booth, and they had this chocolate cake, right? And they had this one chocolate cake they were giving out samples of, and they had a price tag listed next to it, and it was $65. And then they had this other chocolate cake they were giving out samples, and they had a price tag to it, and it was $15. And the cover story was that was a new cake store opening up in the area, and they wanted to test out new recipes, whatever. Well, so then they gave all these samples out to people, and every single person picked the $65 cake as the better cake. And they were the exact same cake.
Yeah, it's the placebo effect.
Well, it's because it's the way our brains are programmed to think.
Placebo effect. It's societal conditioning. When you're raised in a society where, it's in the psychological field they often call it the Mercury Lincoln Ford effect, and that doesn't make a lot of sense nowadays because most people don't know what Mercury Lincoln Ford means. But it used to be, if you were poor, you bought the Ford. If you were middle class, you bought the Mercury. If you were rich, you bought the Lincoln. And you associated Lincoln with better. And Mercury with better than Ford, but not as good as Lincoln. So you're raised in a society where you think there's levels, and every level is better than the next level. You think in our minds are conditioned to think in a staircase progression, when that's not always the case when it comes to price. But we're still conditioned to think that way.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Or being polite, and some people brought out something that didn't taste all that much different. They were just trying to be nice about it.
No, I mean, even in all honesty,
that would come into effect if the bakers were there in front of you. That would very much be in effect.
Yeah, I guess it depends on how it's presented, but it sounds like they were saying, "Hey, there's our new cake, and here's some store brand. What do you think?" Everybody's gonna be like, "Yeah, of course, you're doing the shit." Awesome.
Well, no, they were just. I mean, the way it was presented was very fair, even to the point where the people testing it were like, "Well, cake A is it's drier. The chocolate's not as good. It seems like it's overbaked." And cake B is phenomenal. Like I said, it was the exact same cake. So it's neat the way, like Yankee said, the way our minds have been conditioned to always associate more expensive with better.
Let me throw this out there. What's to stop somebody who's selling boring ass copy cake, literally, and then keep throwing that out there? Hey, there's no difference. There's no difference. Our copy is the same as their original.
That's not always the case, though. Sometimes, like we said earlier, sometimes more expensive is more expensive because it's better. I mean, that is always sometimes the case, but it's not always the case. And you always have to compare apples to apples when you're deciding is expensive better, and you have to take into account, is it expensive? Like say, okay, is this object better because they made it out of titanium instead of aluminum, and it's stronger but lighter, and therefore it's more expensive? Or is it more expensive because they only have a machine that can crank out 10 of them a day, whereas their competition have machines that can crank out 200 of them a day, and they can charge less? You know, you have to take all these things into account when you decide. It's just not necessarily more expensive is better.
I guess what I was talking is the modularity of 1911s and AR-15s. You know, there's a lot of variety, but like, I guess the best example is everybody's buying Mosins, and so I'm like, I gotta get a Mosin too, you know. But like, I didn't really like anything I saw, so I did a bunch of research, and I found apparently the Finnish Mosins are the best. And so I started doing research to find out which Finnish Mosin I want, and I bought a really nice one. And I paid probably 3 or 4 times more than anybody would pay for a Mosin. But going price for Finn Mosin.
Dude, you misunderstood. They said to buy a finished one as opposed to one that's in the process.
But anyway, I got a rifle that shoots I mean, it's ridiculous. It is utterly amazing how well built this rifle is. I mean, it's the Lincoln of Mosins, which isn't really saying a lot, but you know what I mean? It's like, in some cases there are differences between subtle variations, but in others there isn't at all. You know, a BMC is basically, you know, Daniel Fence and a BMC, flip a coin, they're the same thing.
And even when something is better, you also have to always keep in the back of your mind, one of the other things you have to always remember is the law of diminishing returns. It's like that with 1911s. You can pay $1,000 for a 1911 and get an awesome 1911, or you can pay $5,000 and get one that's better. It's not 5 times better, because when you go to the 2000 one, now it's only 30% better. And then you go up another 1,000, and now it's only another 10% better. And then another 1,000, it's only 2% better. You got to decide: am I someone that's willing to pay more money for that 2%, just like I am for that 50%? Because you can pay for something that's 0.5% better, and if you're willing to pay for that, hats off to you. It's great that you can afford it and that you think it's valuable, but you have to take into account that is the 2% difference that I can pay twice as much money for worth it, considering my skill level, what I'm going to use the thing for, etc. Will I ever even notice it?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, that was the ultimate point of kind of this whole topic, was the fact that, you know, you can't just take something on face value.
Well, it's like
just because it's more expensive.
It's like when someone hands me a custom 1911 and says, this thing will shoot 1-inch groups at 100 yards. I'm like, well, that's great. I'll have to take your word for it. I ain't never going to do it, so it doesn't matter to me. I ain't willing to pay for that.
So I think we could all agree that it comes down to basically educating yourself on that particular subject, not just like, I mean, that specific firearm in that particular subject, and that will usually lead you to get if you're willing to pay for it, you can probably get the best value for your money.
Right, absolutely. You know, and then as far as just what, you know, like I said, as far as a reference for people that may watch this later, is just for us to kind of, you know, throw out some companies that we have firsthand experience with that we could recommend that are, in our opinions, from our experience and exposure, phenomenal companies that some people may consider super high end, but that we understand is not necessarily expensive or overpriced, but simply priced for the quality that they are. Does that make sense?
Don't always just take our words for things, because I'll admit I've fallen prey to that before too. I bought springs for one of my favorite guns. I bought a new spring kit for it. I was like, oh, it's gonna make the trigger so much better. I put it in, and I was like, oh, first time in the range, I'm like, this is so much better, so much better. I like this so much better. This was well worth the money I spent on this trigger kit, because it's so much better. Then my best friend shot the gun. He's like, seems about the same to me. So out of curiosity, I go back home and I start, well, let me measure the trigger weight. Trigger weight was exactly the fucking same as it was before, and I would have sworn it was lighter. So I started switching back and forth between one kit and the other, and I'm like, God damn it, now that I'm actually thinking about it, I can't notice a bit of difference between these two. But when I first took it to the range, because I had in my head that I just spent $125 for this, it's going to be so much better.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of what you're talking about. Like, for example, I happen to have a Smith and Wesson Performance Center revolver. Uh, is it overpriced?
On
You
my
know what I mean?
revolvers, because I have both of those, I have side by side, and no, the revolvers, the Performance Center revolvers, do have better triggers, and I mean, so sometimes you are getting what you pay for, but sometimes you're not.
Then again,
Well, and you say overpriced.
Well,
No,
and
that's
I don't
relative.
personally think it's overpriced. That's why I was asking
Well,
the
no, that's what
panel.
I was about to say. Yeah, when you say overpriced, that's relative to whether or not you take in consideration the fact that those performance center firearms are all hand tuned and
And my
gone
point,
over with a
and
fine
my
tooth
point
comb.
was, and my point wasn't that some triggers aren't better than others. It was my point was because I thought it was going to be better, I actually did perceive that it was better until I verified mathematically that it wasn't. And I actually had to convince myself that it wasn't better because I had convinced myself that it was, and so I perceived that it was.
I mean, the performance center that you got, Island, you can't get a non-performance center version. So I mean, it's kind of like that. It is what it is. But I mean, you could.
Well, I mean, I could get a 357 end frame, but yes, I
Yeah.
definitely.
But then you don't have 8 shots, blah, yada yada yada. But
You
like,
don't have
Right,
those funky rails.
but like, like my little J frame isn't performance center. But like, I said earlier about finding rather than spending a bunch of money, like if I could have sent it back and I could have had them dick around with it and make it better, but I just saved some money and went to a local gunsmith and had him do a trigger job, and it came back it's a performance center, and it wasn't a performance. I could get a 686 for a little bit cheaper than a performance center 686 and just have it done locally.
Yeah, I mean
right.
it is a better trigger, and it gets down to whether is it worth the money or not. Well, that's up to you for the little bit better trigger, whether you think it's worth it. And then you also have to consider that if you are a mechanical person and you can watch a video, I mean, you can do a trigger job on a revolver yourself with nothing more than a file and a piece of emery cloth. So, and I used to have people just laugh at me when I'd say that, and I'm on the forums, and I'm like, yeah, go to a gunsmith sometime and watch him do a trigger job.
Right.
Yeah, it's basically a file and some emery cloth, and it takes about half an hour.
So sometimes then when you're paying a little more for some of these firearms that we're talking about, sometimes it's not just the parts, but it's also what the parts are made of then, right?
Well, yeah, like if you're
For
buying
example, like that frame of mine, it's supposedly scandium, but it's a stainless steel barrel and blah, 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 blah,
if you're
blah.
buying a gun that's titanium instead of aluminum, yeah, of course it's going to be more expensive. It's more expensive material, it's lighter, it's stronger, so you're actually paying for a physical difference there.
But that's the only reference I have for Stone Guy's question is that one in particular.
See, I don't think you overpaid, and I think what you bought was awesome.
Well, how can you overpay for something that you can't hardly get, and that's the only one there is like it, and that's the price?
Yeah, like I think what you got, Island, is awesome. Like some people would be like, oh, I can't afford that, blah blah blah, blah. But like, it's I don't know.
Well, I'm gonna agree with you because I couldn't afford it until I did. You know what I mean? It wasn't like it was something that was bought on a whim or anything. I, worked hard, saved hard, all that baloney.
And it's not like it's something that you could get on the cheap and replicate like what I was talking about. Because I mean, I could get a 686 plus and have a trigger job done, but I'm still like, it's still not what you have, like so.
But I'll tell you what, a 686 plus with a trigger job is going to be a pretty nice firearm.
Yeah,
no doubt about that.
But and some people would be like, well, I can't afford a 686. I'll just go get a Taurus. I mean, I guess it's all relative to. But honestly, like, I don't know. I would never buy a Taurus unless it was a really freaking old Taurus revolver that, is from back in the day when they had a little bit better quality control.
I bet I have a Taurus 605. It's an excellent revolver.
How new is it?
2005.
I don't know. It could be. I
had an old Taurus 605 too, and it was an awesome gun. And that's the thing about Taurus. I mean, I never say all Tauruses are crap because with Taurus, you've got about a 70% chance of getting an awesome gun. You also have a 30% chance to get the total lemon because they almost do almost no quality control. They use the market as their quality control. But the bad thing about Taurus revolvers, if you shoot them a lot, they have a tendency to go out of time.
Yeah, I've never shot one enough to recognize that. The first handgun I bought with my own money was a Taurus 85. It was a 38 that was double action only. And I carried it for a while, but I didn't like the double action only after I actually took it to the range. So I traded it for mostly credit towards the 605, and I got that because it's 357 and has a thumb hammer. You can cock it. But both of them were excellent guns. Both of them were timed well, and they didn't have any mechanical problems.
Well, as far as I'm sorry, let's read. As far as gear, yeah, you know, range bags or holsters or belts or, I mean, your philosophy, you know, like for me, I would say pay more and buy it once kind of thing versus, you know, buying something that may be a little less expensive that is of obviously
Like, are you
lower
talking
quality.
like Maxpedition and SOE and stuff like that, or?
Well, yeah, because see, that's the thing with tangible, like with gear, like I guess what do they call that? Textile goods, like where you can actually look at the stitching, you can look at the, you know, feel the thickness of the material, the canvas or the, you know, the leather or whatnot. I think it's a more visual appreciation of something, you know, that you can spot immediately compared to, you know, like a firearm.
Well, my real thing when it comes to accessories is not so much quality, because most of it is acceptable quality that I will never wear it out as long as I use it. But this is now something where a lot of price difference will come into labor. I own a lot of stuff that's made in the U.S. that costs a lot of money, whereas if you buy one that's made overseas, it'll cost you maybe less than half of what it'll pay if you want a U.S.-made product.
Now I know like G-Webs is super big, you know, and I am to an extent. I try to only buy U.S.-made products. Is that a consideration?
I try to too, also because people may say, well, buying it in China costs me half as much. No, it'll cost you a lot more in the long run, especially if you're in your 20s now. The damage to what our economy is going to be like in 30 years is going to cost you a lot.
Yeah, that's what I just want to, you know, pose that question to people out there. Do you, or I guess maybe even challenge people out there to say, you know, maybe pay an extra $5 or $10 more to keep it in the United States, to keep it a U.S.-made product.
I take it sometimes even a step further, in that I'll try to prioritize products made in the Pacific Northwest, like Blade Tech, because I live up here in Washington, but Blade Tech, they have their production out in Puyallup, and so I buy a lot of Blade Tech products. I have Blade Tech holsters and a Blade Tech belt. All of the Blade Tech stuff I bought has lasted me. I bought a belt 4 years ago, and I'm still wearing it, so...
Well, it's like I always promote it, buying from your local gun shops. Don't buy from the internet, because that same thing of damaging your local economy. And then people see now that I'm buying from like the Prepper gun shop online. They're like, well, why aren't you supporting your local gun shops anymore? I'm like, because they all fucking closed. Every one of them. It was because people were buying off the internet. So now I have no local sources for guns other than big box stores.
Well, I think for a lot of local gun stores, some of that was kind of self-inflicted. There's a local gun shop in my area.
No, bullshit.
I don't...
It's not self-inflicted. You know,
well,
because they treat the occasional asshole like an asshole, it's not self-inflicted. I get so sick of people hearing it's the gun shop's fault because they charge too much or they blah, blah, blah. Most gun shops charge a fair price, especially if you go in and negotiate with them, and most gun shops are nice to you if you're a good customer. So just because the reason they're out of business is because the vast majority, there might be the occasional overpriced gun shop, because there are. I mean, I know there's one here locally that's just a jackass and he overprices things, but that's not the general rule for gun shops.
Well, I wasn't talking more prices. I was thinking more just attitude because there is a local gun shop in my area that's.
You do get a lot of attitude in gun shops, but it's not the general rule that gun shops give most people attitude. That's
No, I get the problem at that one gun shop. I don't get a problem anywhere else. It's the whole.
I found that lately my local gun shops, the two favorite ones that I go to all the time, their prices have come down comparable to online prices, to where why even bother buy it online, because you're going to end up paying shipping and transfer fees and all that. And plus the guys that work there are pretty awesome. So it's not like there's one shop around me where you get the stank eye and you just don't even want to buy them. They're overpriced.
the one big shop around here that I used to use all the time that's now out of business. I was in there many times when someone would come in and go, "Hey, I bought this gun off Gunbroker, and can you have it shipped in for me?" And they're like, "Sure." And they'll be looking at his invoice. They'll be like, "Oh, you paid $619 for this, and then you paid another $20 shipping, and now you're going to pay a $20 service fee. I got the same gun right here for $620."
Yep.
So you just spent $40 extra to wait a week and a half to get it.
Who pays $20 for transfer fees? That'd be pretty nice.
That's what we charge here is $20.
Lowest I got around here is 25.
That's why they went out of business.
There's pretty much the transfer fees around here range anywhere from free, because some places around here will give me free transfers, to the average cost is $10 to $20. I think there's one place that charges $25, and then there's one that charges $100, but no one uses it.
I pay 10.
They're just gunsmiths, not gun shops, though.
I think it's 25 for a transfer for the most part out here.
Back to gear.
Wow.
I don't know.
Well, it's like I buy all my guns now from local gun shops. There's no advantage to going to a private party anymore in Washington because you have to go to an FFL to transfer it. So.
Well, there is the advantage of no sales tax if it's used.
But on the gear thing, you were talking about high-end stuff, and now you're also talking about made in America. So, like, is Maxpedition made in America, or it's just externally made? Externally made.
Not even Vietnam and China.
So really, are you paying for any quality, or are you just really paying for the Maxpedition coolness, design type of factor?
I pay more attention to, if I don't have an option of an American brand, I'll try to choose the American brand. But even then, I still try to pay more attention to what material are they using, what type of stitching are they using, etc.
Yeah, nothing worse than blowing a stitch out on a piece of gear at the exact wrong moment and ending up with pitching a piece of your equipment into the dirt, especially if it's like a sling.
I'd agree with that.
Or a mag pouch.
I've seen some stuff come over the big box stores that's just so fucking cheap looking. It looks like a single stitched shirt from Walmart.
Yep.
Let's see. I'm looking to see if that sling that I just bought the other day was made in America or not.
I at very least want to see a double cross stitch, where they have two lines of stitching with the X in between it stitched. That's what I want to see at least in stitching.
Usually, if you look hard enough, you can find gun accessories that are American. That's usually the one thing left you can.
Right.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's it's definitely something to consider. It's definitely something to, for an extra $5 here, $10 there. Like Yankee said, it's going to be in the long run. If we all do a little, it'll make a huge impact over time. I think as a nation, we've gotten way too complacent when it comes to buying American and making sure that we're keeping it in the country, because we just get we see the sticker and we're like, oh, it's $5 cheaper, I'm going to buy it, and don't even consider where it's made or how it's made. And I know to some people that they're like, fuck it, I don't care where it's made, it's $5 cheaper. But yeah, I guess that's on you. If you can live with yourself, then by all means.
Well, it's like years ago, I got a multi-tool from a friend as like a gift, and it was a little made in China multi-tool. It was like maybe $7 at the grocery store. And I had that for less than maybe 3 months because it was just so crappy. The blades didn't stay into place. It was very loose and all that stuff. I went and paid $75 for a Leatherman of the same size and all the tools, and I still have it 3 years later. So,
And there is inexpensive, not cheap, but inexpensive U.S. made gear. You just have to search.
Right. What about some stuff that's quality? Like, isn't Aimpoint made in Sweden?
Yeah.
So,
Trigicon is made in Michigan.
okay.
I put
But
a
with
link in
German
it.
glass, probably. I don't think we make that much glass here.
I just put a link into Spec Ops gear. They're U.S. made. They make really good shit. I've been using their stuff. Tactical Tailor's another one, but they're a little more expensive. Spec Ops has blowout sales. That'll be like 50% or more off.
Oh
They
yeah, now
like
see
this
that's
little mom and pop down in Texas or something like that.
Spec Ops.
Yeah.
this is what I wanted. I wanted something like this to be able for people to look, because I've never heard of Spec Ops. So hopefully someone else watching this chat will be like, shit, I've never heard of Spec Ops, and they'll go and look
Like I
at
said,
it.
you can. It's all about research, and if you're just do your homework, and you can find these things. These companies are. I mean, they're a small company, but people know about them. And I mean, I found out about them through the Army, but I've talked to other people that I never talked to them about this brand, and they've heard about them too. And there's a lot of value.
I've
to
never
be
heard
found.
about them, so that's awesome. I'm bookmarking the page right now. You know,
Yeah.
that's what I said. That's kind of what I wanted to get at is, you know, to give people some information, give people, you know.
So, kind of like what Yankee said earlier, people get complacent and they just go for the easiest, and in the end, it turns out to bite them in the ass a little bit. You know, probably not a lot, but you know, it takes a little time to find these things, but they're out there. It's not, you know. Like I said, and we named off a couple brands. I put another link to a Washington, a very inexpensive Kydex holster maker in Washington because Eric said he liked to support his local businesses. So, and they sell. I use one of their holsters every day for concealed carry, and I'm not gonna even go back to like one of the boutique expensive Raven concealment, or what's the other one that everybody loves?
Bravo.
Yeah. I'm not gonna even. I mean, they're great. Don't get me wrong. Their customer service is stellar, but they're also like 3 months out, and it's $100 for a holster. So
That's why I've been buying these Concealment Express holsters. $35 shipped, made in the U.S.
yeah.
And they're pretty good. I've been carrying my 26 in it all for like past 3 months, and not a problem.
Dubs, that's a great playlist you got there.
Yeah, I've been friends with Spec Ops for a long time. They're super quality, good stuff. West Texas.
Okay, and is it like a mom and pop? Because I swear I saw a video. No, okay, I'm thinking of somebody else.
It's a real company. They've been doing it for a long time. Like I said, they have military contracts and the big hunting company. I forget what their hunting division is called, but that's where they started. I've got interviews with the boss somewhere, the owner of the place, and he was basically just a dude. I think he started making the messenger bag or something first, and then he got into hunting gear and moved over to whatever you'd call, like what Yankee would call tactical gear, but basically just nylon gear for whatever shooters uses. And good stuff, super quality, super strong. They've done some innovative stuff, I suppose, and just good general people. So what I was going to say about that stuff is, like I said, I'm down for made in USA, but I mean, one of the big reasons is because these companies are typically either, well, almost always owned by, but usually employ almost exclusively vets, because they get out of the military, they know what their brothers needed. So some of the guys got out. Maybe they were in supply. Maybe they just, used gear hard and they knew what broke. Some of these guys were supplying, elite units. Some of them were supplying any kind of unit. I mean, any task that you can imagine doing that there's not a specific, maybe a pouch or some kind of a nylon strap or holder thingy that the government bureaucracy would have taken a while to get made and shipped and approved and all that. Somebody just said, hey, I know a guy with a sewing machine, let's get this made. These companies sprouted up that way, and now they're owned by and employing ex-military guys. So the companies themselves, a lot of times you're keeping our vets employed, and the worst part is when they put out something, again, for whatever the impetus was. Maybe they needed it for a specific task, or there was just a clever reuse of an old bag or something else, right? They came up with their idea. Then some company in, let's say, another country will come along, take a whole bunch of photographs of it, go to their sweatshops where they make our shoes and our shirts and our other clothes, and then get a bunch of cheap nylon that looks like nylon but ain't nylon because it wasn't made here and it's just similar, and then sew all that up so that it looks just like it, or maybe add a few pockets or whatever their marketing people said, and then ship it over here and it smells like Chinese nylon. And that's the worst part, is that dollar is not only not going to the U.S. guy, but it's the U.S. guys and gals that came up with this stuff in the first place. So it's like taking their idea and giving the dollar to China or Vietnam or whatever.
And that's like the most frustrating part too, when you see that there's a lot of these products that are made in China that are just copies of the one that was invented here first.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I'm just flipping through this with their website now. They've got some really cool stuff. So.
And if you're interested in Spec Op gear, that's the kind of stuff we'll be giving away as loot when we start doing the weekly photo contests again. I've got at least a few belts up there, a few slings, a few pouches, stuff that they gave us to give away in the past. And basically I'm trying to get together with Dano and Z, and we'll figure out some ways to do this. But there'll be definitely, this already is, if you want to take a look at it, to go to the trading post and dig in there for prizes. I think that's one of the options in there. Instead of like a gun or a pouch or whatever, just check prizes. And that's just a bunch of stuff that I've gotten over the years to give away. And there's a bunch of Spec Ops stuff in there.
That's awesome.
I need a sling.
And the wrap type of stuff.
Papa needs a sling.
There's what's the name of
Nobody that owns a Dark Earth Glock that I don't have is eligible.
But it's in 380, G.
I understand, but sometimes you cross the line and you become ineligible for free stuff.
Understandable.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. Well, I think we've been running a little over an hour. This will be a good time to end it here. Oh, I got to do the giveaway first. See, we didn't have hardly anybody commenting on YouTube side. I don't know what the hell's going on with YouTube.
Let's go in the YMI space.
Yeah. Picking the Smeggie. S-M-E-G-G-I-E. Smeggie.
The problem is right now a lot of people are using their phones and pads to watch and they can't comment because of the glitch in the program.
So Smeggie, you win the patch, man. Go to Gun Channels, fill out the little form there.
For daily patch giveaway, Gun Channels /DPG for daily patch giveaway, and there's a form right there you can fill out. Just say which date and time and Snow Guy and all that, and you got it.
Your social security number, your bank account number, and your next of kin.
Store number is important.
Right. So Smedgy, you win, brother. Appreciate us. We always see you out there commenting, so we appreciate your support. Appreciate you watching.
And if you want to wait a little bit, I did take a new picture today, so I've got a current or picture coming up here in the next hours or so.
Cool deal. Well, man, I appreciate everybody that showed up tonight. Appreciate everybody that tuned in, watching. Hopefully this gave you a little good information. Like I said, it was kind of impromptu. I hadn't had something else lined up that fell through. So anyway, as always, I appreciate everybody tuning in, and we'll do it again next week. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Stan.